Welcome to the Rooted Healing podcast, where we seek to deepen our kinship with the living world and with the great mystery that runs through us. This is a space where stories heal with words that weave us closer to our wild and daring natures, bringing together the expansive minds, topics, and ideas that help us heal, reimagine, and co-create the world we wish to thrive in.
In ancestral practices, we find always alteration of consciousness is not just for the sake of it, not just to go out of your body and experience this, or reconnecting with the divine. It's not just because of that. We have the amazing ability, literally, to change our state of consciousness, and as we change it, we can have another perspective. So when we have another perspective, novel thinking, for example, about a disorder, and then it comes to the diagnosis, no? The shamanic diagnosis is very different. So you alter your consciousness to deeply understand the situation.
Elisa Fusi is an Italian molecular biologist, visionary herbalist, and writer with a research focus on human pathology, mycology, neuroscience, and ecology. She graduated in herbal medicine in London and has worked in laboratories in Europe, Madagascar, and Cambodia. She started an ongoing investigation on folk medicine, ancestral rituals, and indigenous cultures all over the world, living with different indigenous groups in Madagascar and across Central and South America. She later obtained a diploma in Mayan medicine issued by the Mayan Medicine Institute of Guatemala. She has recently trained with Cambo by the Matsas people, promoting several initiatives protecting the rights of the land and the people of the Amazonian basin along the way. After a near-death experience, her quest for a more complete understanding of human consciousness became stronger. She founded an environmental organisation called You Are Home, and later in 2012 she created Alchemia, an educational centre and intentional space for promoting alternative teachings on herbalism, shamanism and alchemy, recently relocated to Costa Rica. Alchemia's mission is to guide the individual towards self-realisation and self-sufficiency by exploring the more authentic forms of ancestral practices through an unfiltered connection to nature, in order to promote the exchange of wisdom, traditional knowledge, and to experience living in mutual symbiosis with nature, removing unnecessary technology and the usual comforts. Elisa is also a Psycho-neuroEndocrineImmunology practitioner and Psycho-oncologist, offering advice, resources and courses and support to people with cancer and autoimmune disorders at her clinic in Costa Rica. To accompany this episode, Elisa has generously offered a personal consultation on chronic disorders. It'll be a video call for one of our patrons. This is an amazing opportunity, and I personally would love to receive Elisa's one-on-one support and guidance, whether that's cancer, autoimmune, whatever it is. So if you're a podcast patron, or if you'd like to become one, we're going to let that run for a month to see who comments who would really like to access this beautiful offering. You can become a podcast patron from £2 a month. That's like buying me a hot chocolate. And you will have instant access to a rich archive of resources from our previous guests. Head to patreon.com/rootedhealing to support the show. Before we jump into the episode, we still have spaces left at Ancestral, which is happening next month, July the 10th to the 16th in North Wales. Join us for a truly unique opportunity to fully embody native wisdom and living, become a part of the village woven into the Celtic landscape, where the alchemy of Welsh rainforest, rushing river, mystical lake, ancient oaks, roundhouse councils, fireside stories, ancient crafts, sacred songs, and ancestral foods from the hearth will reverberate through your being, bringing insight into what it means to be interrelated and how we can become rooted ancestors for our future generations. We are offering a 10% discount to listeners. Head to rootedhealing.org/ancestral to learn more and reserve your spot. We also have a free summer solstice ceremonial gathering in Dorset in 2 weeks' time. You can register by the link in the show notes. And we're now accepting applications for Earth Medicine, our signature psilocybin retreat in the Netherlands. And our next immersion is in October. Head to rootethealing.org/earthmedicine to learn more. I'd love to understand what led you to the depths of this work. I mean, I've seen that you've experienced a near-death encounter. Was that a part of what led you to explore the work that you are now?
Yeah, definitely an inquisitive mind is enough sometimes to go deeper on a subject you love. So the reason I was fascinated by medicine, and it's because literally I don't feel like a detachment from medicine and philosophy. So in an early stage of life, when I started to study molecular biology and pathology at uni, I was very much in love with all the different aspects of it, not written in books. So I started to experience a different form of medicine. That was an early stage. Then definitely experiences in life, they brought me to understand that medicine is a personal path as well. Coming from ancestral practices to modern medicine, we feel this connection from the two, but the reality is that it's always about us. So it's also, we want to go deeper and understand ourselves, and the body definitely, it's part of it, but not the only thing. So let's say I found a profound void in conventional medicine studied, and that's what brought me to explore. It was genuine desire to explore, literally, without the real purpose of helping others at the beginning. Then it's obvious that we grow the purpose of it. And so now definitely I'm in the position I don't really have an end to continuous research. So it's still ongoing, and I think it will never end. So I'm still researching and investigating with an open mind. The early fascination also of nature helped a lot because in nature I found the most significant medicine. And when I refer to medicine, I also refer to the form of heal ourselves spontaneously and in many different ways, not just physically. So the two together, I guess they were a bomb. And then I love to travel, so that's an important part, because if you're stuck in the same environment, you are exposed to the same kind of thinking around you, you read the same books and so on, you never have the chance to enlarge your perspective. And so studying also with different groups led me to this point when I can collect not just information or just sterile data, but experience. So that's, let's say, a brief summary of what brought me here, but then definitely personal experience as well.
Yeah, beautiful. So your near-death experience came later, I'm assuming, and didn't really contribute to your initial curiosity. But I am curious, if you're happy to share, I'd love to hear about how this did shape you, especially if you were already immersed in the healing arts.
No problems. I actually thought about it a couple of days ago, like how can change life, definitely, how it's a peculiar experience, and how it was strongly inviting me to appreciation for life, definitely, but also, most importantly, to have less fear of death. I will not say I'm not scared of death, but it was an instant moment, and then with a lot of consequences, leading me to the path of understanding, accepting death as a form of shifting, not as the end of everything. And if you think for a moment, Veronica, like if we remove in an instant the fear of death. Wow, how will be our life? How will be humanity?
Yeah.
It's definitely limiting how we see that, especially in industrialized society where we have this refusal of that, and in medicine it's so evident. And then in a moment, you just realize that you are beyond the body. There's something more, it's different, but it opens up to a series of behaviors when you're back. And so beyond words, literally, very difficult to explain, but what was the consequence of this experience, and it was more than 10 years ago, actually, it's this appreciation for living, existing, and definitely also changed the way I was looking at medicine and healing. And that's how everything started. It's how I started my path in the educational center. I have courses, and now the natural medicine clinic. But definitely it was a big change in my in my life. So I cannot even express how much it changed me. But I can tell you, if I'm this person right now, it's also because of that. And I feel particularly blessed because you retain, beyond the information, you can retain an interpretation of the experience, because it's personal. I have this sense of peace that it changes everything. It changes the way you interact with people, the way you treat yourself, the way you walk this, planet. So it's a profound shift. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I can only imagine how powerful it must have been. And it reminds me of this notion to die before you die. I think it was Rumi, or I think it's been written somewhere in some ancient cave, I don't know. But this idea that when we experience or we transcend our normal ego-identifying state of selfhood and we let go and we sort of have a death experience, we learn to live awake. We learn to really live.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So a lot of your work is focused on healing and treating chronic disease. I'd love to hear you talk about this and how your approach differs from perhaps mainstream conventional modalities.
Yeah, no, it's a big topic. It is. It's not because it's on the rise. It's just because now it feels very much confusing in conventional medicine, the study of chronic disorders. And why is that? Because most doctors of biomedicine, let's say, they are very much trained in emergency care and acute disorders. And we thank for that. I mean, if we have an hemorrhage, we absolutely need that. So it's absolutely life-saving. But when it comes to a disorder that it's very difficult to test and analyze through our technology, and it's silent, sometimes it appears, sometimes it disappears, it comes with a constellation of symptoms and signs that can be hardly connected if we follow protocols. So the big problem at the moment is that conventional medicine is not able or fully able to investigate properly these connections between the different symptoms because of lack of time. And that's crazy because these disorders, they need an accurate investigation. Because they're intricate, I call it the intricate web of illness. Because of that, I just remind myself that the reason also I like to study this is because you don't need to have a lazy mind. Because if you have it, you cannot understand the disorders. You need to engage in a lot of thinking and connect the different parts of the body and ultimately also the mind. And so imagine like conventional doctor and having a limited time to just give answers or to find a treatment. We're speaking about minutes sometimes. How is it possible? They don't even have the time to read articles, and they follow protocols. There is a system behind them. So chronic disorders is the way of nature to tell us we need to stop, breathe, and take time to reflect on what's happening. Because the unicity of the person, we have also a unique way to respond to a chronic disorders, because it takes a long time to accumulate different factors and elements that are disturbing our health. Actually, we are an amazing, we are not machines, definitely, but we have amazing bodies, and our physiology is very efficient. So we need time to disrupt all of that. And it comes to be very different for each person. And some of these disorders, they are mind-body disorders, body-mind disorder reverse. An example, we think of a person with a leaky gut, dysbiosis, or just an alteration of the microbiome, so a digestive problem. And then we know now through science that this can bring us to have a depressive mood, or eventually in time depression. But then we know also that depression can lead to digestive problems and so on. So it's intricate, because everything is connected in our body, and not only in our body. We have definitely, we receive influence from what we think, the relationships we have, the environment around us. So we need to take all these elements and to take the time, literally time, to investigate and understand what's going on. So chronic disorders, they sometimes look subtle, but there is something happening, I think. Also, it's that we are a little bit detached from ourselves. No, we don't perceive these changes, but they are there. So let's say sometimes a chronic disorder requires like even 10 years to manifest. But what is before that? Is there any sign that I can understand in my body telling me that something is out of balance? And the answer is yes, definitely they're there, but we look like absent sometimes. We don't take the time to connect to our bodies, to ask ourselves, how do I feel today, and why is that? Is it something changing in my physiology, in the way I breathe? So we don't. And again, it's a question of time. So it's because it looks we are busy, but we should feel more responsible for our bodies. That's the truth. It's not something, you can force. It should be natural that we care for ourselves, and we take the time to also be more in touch with ourselves. In shamanic cultures, it's very normal that a person, when he's sick, is sent in isolation even, to just take the time to properly establish a dialogue which has been lost, with the self, so not just with the body. And why is that difficult for us? Why we always look for fixing a disorder when it's too late or when it's fully manifested. Chronic disorders, they're teaching us this in this moment, to take more time to observe. And that's the key, because most of these chronic disorders, they can be prevented, or at least we can just, observe and find that there is some imbalance, so that we can avoid the consequences, so come back to harmony. And in my opinion, this is also wider on the rise, not just depending on ourselves. Of course, there are a lot of external factors that we should be in control of, but we are not. Like, contaminants, pollutions. Again, in my opinion, chronic disorders are also telling us something else. If there are things that we can prevent, like diet, lifestyle, behaviors, how we think, There are things we cannot control individually. We have to control these as a society, collectively. This is, for example, the environment we live in and the society we run. And so we cannot control as individual the contamination of the air or the water. But as collective individuals, yes, we can. So if we are now recognizing that a lot of these elements that can disrupt our balance and provoke chronic disorders, they are exactly there in the elements, in the air, in the water, in the way we manage our lives, we should act as a collective. And that's also my opinion. It's a big shift from medicine to ecology, but it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are the ecological self. We're not just this individual that's separate. We are woven with the landscapes. And I had Sophie Strand come on the podcast, and she was saying perhaps we need to redefine health. Perhaps people experiencing illness are in deeper symbiosis with a planet that is experiencing illness. And it resonated in many ways, especially when you look at the statistics of even just gender with autoimmunity, for example. It seems that women are twice as likely to develop autoimmune diseases. I'm curious, from your work and from having the holistic approach that you do, what are the main patterns of illness that you perceive, whether that's predominantly autoimmune conditions or cancer, or if that's of a similar pattern of illness?
Actually, you also called, one of the percentage that is very difficult to investigate, like how is that women are more prone to develop autoimmune disorders. So coming back to the roots, we know now, it's established that most of autoimmune disorders have a chronic inflammation pattern. So at the end, we always come back to that. Chronic inflammation, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
And there is something happening. There is a trigger or more triggers, but there is one that captured my attention even in many years ago, actually, because it's an old investigation. It's that most autoimmune disorders are triggered by trauma. Now, it's true that not in all societies, but let's say for what my experience is, women are definitely more sensitive to trauma. And they can potentially also be more sensitive in general to happenings and events. So if trauma is one of the big triggers, and also stress, and stress can mean many things, grief, for example, or long periods of isolation and so on, all these things, they contribute to the manifestation of an autoimmune disorder. But the autoimmune disorder is probably there, or at least it's waiting to see what's going to happen in the body. I want to touch this briefly because it's a Pandora box, chronic inflammation. But we need to think of our cells, tissues, organs, the whole systems in our body to be connected, definitely. But also we have an environment where they live. And so they're not disconnected from their environment, which means a lot of things, interstitial fluids, the extracellular matrix, and so on. So many things happening. And that can lead to accumulation of toxins, for example, and accumulation also of potential allergens and so on, we know. But why is that only a percentage of people who is exposed to this is getting sick and the others not? It's the same story of putting a virus inside a room with 10 people and just 3 of them are sick and the others not. Why is that? The same virus, the same exposition, but not everybody is reacting the same. Because especially in autoimmune disorders, we have a confused immune system. It's not like an enemy, like sometimes it's said, it's revolving, it's actually out of control and attacking the self. It's not just that. It's not able to recognize what it's doing because it's misled. So it's more a sort of dysfunctional immune system that has been triggered by long-term inflammation, which means lack of adaptation. It's not a case, it's the adaptive system, the adaptive immune system that is out of control. It's because of this accumulation of different elements, disturbing elements, that the body is not more able to be resilient. And that's not just the body, it's also the mind. If we are living a period of stress, let's say me and you, and different persons, same events, same situations, but different way to cope with stress. It's definitely true that this will make a difference. The way we cope with stress, the way we adapt to a stressful situation, which can be mild trauma or a strong event. So the body knows. And the body will, at a certain point, explode. So the immune system is dysregulated.
Yeah, and I find that really fascinating because I've recovered from an autoimmune condition that I've had since my early teens, if not earlier. And I think a big piece of that was recognizing trauma and just the learned pattern of an environment that was very volatile, like didn't feel very safe. And so I think my body felt like it needed to be overly defensive. Amongst all the other things, like I know that also, I was given antibiotics at a young age to deal with a kidney infection, which happened right when my parents were divorcing. So my gut microbiome must have just gone, must have really, I can just see there's all these different pieces of the puzzle. And it's been such a journey. I'm very grateful for it. And I had cancer when I was 20. So on a very personal level, but I think, cancer is so widespread. It would be really interesting to hear you talk about your approach with cancer.
Yes, as you said, it's very difficult sometimes to speak about cancer and to remove the fear and the stigma around cancer.
Yeah,
it's true. It's the most difficult part. As soon as we hear the word, we are in panic, and panic doesn't help, definitely. So what I really believe is that, to be honest, cancer can be called a problem of longevity. And that's true. Biologically speaking, for example, we are more prone to have a cancer because our life expectancy has increased, true, but we age bad. Okay, so there is no doubt about that. Except few individuals in this planet, we can see how we age not properly, how it should be. So, as we were speaking already about accumulation of elements of disruption, so disruption of balance, homeostasis, when we have cancer in a later stage of life, definitely it could be considered in this specific moment almost physiological. But you mentioned, for example, you had cancer already when you were young. I myself experienced some very early stage of cancer when I was young. So what is this about? So it's not about just longevity, the oxidation of cells and so on. The interpretation we give now about cancer in conventional medicine is started to be obsolete. That's true. We are really arriving to a shift of a paradigm in the theory of the origin of cancer. And why is that? Because, as you know, the main theory we are following, so the treatments we use, they're following a theory that said, okay, there is a series of mutations, not just one actually, accumulating in a single cell, changing the DNA, and then the cell is rug and is out of control, and this is how it's cancer spreading. It's not enough. So we've seen already, through several experiments, and it's more recent, but it's definitely realistic theory where cancer is not a cell problem. It's not cell-based pathology. Actually, also because we have this old perspective about a cell to be a unit. But believe me, if you put a cell alone, it doesn't do anything. It's not even alive almost. What do we need? We need organization. We need tissues. We need an organism. So we're speaking about a different level. And that's why the tissue organization field theory was born, saying like, these cells, they just don't function alone. They communicate between them. They communicate between tissues, other molecules, and organs, and so on. So again, I can tell that accordingly to this theory, what I really think it's real, cancer is a communication problem. So if you want to look at the psychosomatic aspect, it's like our cells are not more conversing, and so they don't follow orders because there are no orders to be given. There is lack of communication. It's detachment, literally. How is this theory more more realistic? Because if you actually take even an instant picture of your body right now, it can be me, you, or another person, randomly, you're going to see that there are cancer cells in our body every time, at different ages, later or earlier, doesn't matter, there are. And why is that? Because it's normal to have mutations and accumulation of mutations, it's something there. But we have an amazing systems which is regulating this potential, hazard in the body, and so everything is kept safe. But how is it possible? Because the other healthy cells, let's say the ones that are able to communicate, they have an organization. And so they instruct the potentially dangerous cells to behave regularly. So they normalize other cells. So this has been proven experimentally. And so in this theory, and that's the most incredible part, there is hope because it said, tissues, they can be normalized. And so potentially cancer cells, they can reverse their status. So they can be healthier again. Now imagine if we translate this line of thoughts into treatments. It means like, for example, instead of bombing the unhealthy cells, we start to instruct them. So we promote the healthier cells. We help them to thrive better. So what is this line of thought? It's telling us that, for example, if we act aggressively, even, for example, with surgery or chemo or radiotherapy against cells in general, we can potentially create more disruption because the architecture of the tissues, the architecture of the cells, they can potentially be more sensitive. And so instead of helping, these cells to reorganize and normalize, we are actually working on the opposite direction. We are what is the so-called war against cancer. It's a real war because we use very strong weapons. And so this side of the theory, and that's why I found it very interesting and applicable. So it's because it's telling us, no, we need more gentle therapies to actually bring back the microenvironment of the cells to be healthy. Yeah. And so we can act just bringing a right environment around these cells so they can feel that they can come back to normality. If you apply this to society, you see there is always some psychosomatic meaning here and there. We can change the environment around us, the way we breathe, how we connect to each other, and we will see that eventually we all feel better. If it's like a little bit like when we want to put a criminal in jail, no? In our society, it has to be punished. And sometimes we use aggressive weapons again. But what if, we can educate, train, and help So that's why I think this theory can be a way to revolutionize a little bit the treatments. And I really believe in the future, maybe in 20 years or less, we will already see different ways to treat cancer, because remember that cancer already like 40, 50 years ago, it was considered to be a lethal disorder, and it was potentially like a death sentence. So now it's called a chronic disorder. We can prolong the life of people. The life expectancy is longer. And what if in 10, 20 years, changing treatments, because that's the point. What if we can, start to reverse? So we're going to call cancer differently then. And that's my hope, my interest also, because I think natural therapies, they're very suitable for chronic disorders and cancer too. Even maybe we perceive them as light, not strong. It's not correct, because there are many risk factors and elements that can provoke cancer, and we know that you may have many different gentle weapons still effective that they can help the body to come back to homeostasis or balance. We have to change the environment of these poor cells. They need to find back health around them. And so, I haven't touched the mental aspects, of course, but as you are fully aware, definitely we also need to cope and to adapt to a disorder. Yeah. So the mind is absolutely important. And in my personal, path and my work, I see cancer, for example, is not always like, that sentence. Also, if I speak with survivors, wow, what did they have back from cancer? They found back gratitude, appreciation for life. They found a spiritual way to interpret the world. So it's not just death. And even if it's death, then it's still, a way to understand yourself through illness. And so definitely not the most pleasant way, but let's say it's not that we need always to think of cancer as, that sentence. That's the most important thing. We need to, to have this sense also of, the desire literally to bring back to a state of health the full body. So it's not an organ-based disease. That's what it makes it sometimes me shivering, like when they say I have a lung cancer, I have a liver cancer. Okay, but remember, it's not just one organ. Actually, your liver doesn't live outside of you. So you need to think of the whole body. And again, that's the new form of medicine I can see, personalized and definitely taking into account the whole bodies, and so considering also the mind in it. That's how I picture it.
I love hearing you articulate that. It's something I think Zach Bush has also spoken about in terms of cancer being a condition of miscommunication or disconnection within the cells. And we both have been on journeys of exploring ancestral or indigenous healing traditions. Love to hear about your apprenticeship and studentship with various indigenous healers and how you were guided especially towards Mayan medicine traditions.
Yes, so it's an ongoing path because I'm still very interested in knowing different perspectives as well. Sometimes we have a romantic idea of indigenous people and ancestral medicine. My real interest was to find common threads in different cultures, in time and space, distant in time and space, and to find, some kind of universal truths. I was very idealistic, I'm still, and I found them. So it doesn't matter the geography of it or the time. What is very common to most ancestral practices or belief systems is that the importance is given to self-healing. It's actually the only healing, the only existing healing, or the only healing available, because there is this importance given to the inner abilities, so the regenerative abilities of the person. And as I always notice, when we speak about these medicines, we speak also a lot of sensorial experiences. Instead of relying on external technologies, like now, if you want to know what's going on inside your body, you have an X-ray or ultrasounds. So what is special in shamanism and ancestral practices? You start to give power, because that's the word, you give power to your inner abilities, inner technology. In the same way, we don't need really a thermometer to know if our temperature is going up. And the same way, we can start to observe ourselves using these inner tools. I found this very profound, because if we think of the placebo effect, at the end is that, we can call it in many ways, but it's giving power to the mind and to our abilities to change the organic field, to change our physical parts. Is it possible? Yes, it is, but in shamanic cultures, it's more evident because it's part of their belief systems. For us, it's more complicated. We also live in an age which is very confusing, because we are full of information, full of technology. And when something happens to us, the very first thing that we do, especially when we are sick, we ask the help of another person who is not us, who doesn't know what's going on. So we just rely a lot on external power. While in shamanic cultures, you can be alone. You have the assistance of an healer or of another person. And what we call like plant medicines or natural therapies, they are just assisting your healing. They're not provoking, or they're not the only, response. Exactly the opposite of what we experience in modern medicine. When I want a pill because I want to fix a problem, I can fix a symptom or I can fix a disease. It doesn't matter. I just look for an answer and a cure in something external to me. When we know that we live inside ourselves, and we need to change also ourselves deeply if we want to heal. That's what made me think a lot of the change in paradigm that we will probably experience in the future. There is absolute need of shifting the value of medicine. So medicine cannot be always something external. And it can be, of support, but not the only cure available. So first thing in shamanic culture is that. Then, against the romantic ideas we may have, ancestral practices are very much rustic and concretely earthly and very practical. So yes, there is a lot of spiritual approach to every disorder. And the thing that I love more is that there is no need to name a disorder like now. What do I have? Rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, I feel better. Why is that? Because we think, erroneously, that when we name something, we know it. It's the way we proceed. That's the human being. We name something, then we know it. Is it true? No. Actually, it's the opposite. We just give names, and that's it. In the shamanic cultures, it's the opposite. There is no need to name a specific disorder because it's personal. So if a certain person is experiencing certain symptoms and there is the need to understand, investigate, which elements are corrupted, where is the imbalance, that has to be tailored. So it makes more sense, for example, to say this was Elisa spring season 2012 disorder, let's say, instead of calling it with a sterile name. Because definitely in shamanic cultures, we need to look at all these different elements, and the context is very relevant. So no need to name it, but just to understand it. That's what's the philosophy about it, that comprehension is the real medicine. And the byproduct of comprehending is to be healed. That's very much overwhelming, if we think about it. Really, is that if I know myself better, I'm going to heal? Definitely, from many points of view. So that's why in ancestral practices we find always alteration of consciousness. It's not just for the sake of it, just to go out of your body and experience this, or reconnecting with the divine. It's not just because of that. We have the amazing ability, literally, to change our state of consciousness, and as we change it, we can have another perspective. So when we have another perspective, novel thinking, for example, about a disorder, and then it comes to the diagnosis, The shamanic diagnosis is very different. So you alter your consciousness to deeply understand the situation. And understanding, again, is the real aim. Sometimes to comprehend, you need to go in certain realms. It can be in the labyrinth of the mind or somewhere else, but that's why psychedelics also have been brought in these cultures. It was very spontaneous and it was effective. And so it has helped people to understand disorders, definitely in a different way. So it's completely different from what is modern medicine's interpretation, but still very valid.
Yeah, I love the way you just articulated that. It's so relevant to something I'm writing about at the moment, actually exploring altered states of consciousness throughout time and this different way of knowing. Something you've mentioned in some of the herbalism courses you're running is this notion of ecological consciousness. And I would love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, and often when I refer to ecological consciousness, I really think of a spontaneous happening. It can happen, for example, in the life of an herbalist, to grow your plants, to have your own garden, and to start to think of plants in a different way. So you'd stop to grow plants or preserve nature because it's giving you gifts, or because a certain plant has certain medicinal properties. So not for your own benefit, but you start to develop something and it's natural, which is protection of nature and beauty. What you want is really to recreate harmony, and to recreate harmony you have certain tasks. So ecological consciousness is something that can be developed just by working with plants, not even ingesting them. Somehow this word was coming up when we were speaking about, for example, ayahuasca and other psychedelics. Like you mentioned, DMT alone can be triggering ecological consciousness in people. Why? Because, and this can be done even without psychedelics, to be honest, we start to perceive ourselves as a unit, a full organism. We can easily melt with the universe. We can easily melt with consciousness itself. And this openness has consequences, beautiful ones. And so you start to develop something which is beyond your own body, beyond your own consciousness. You feel definitely one with everything. So do you want to preserve it? Definitely. You want to preserve it because so you're alive? Not necessarily. It's not a survival modality. Actually, it's the opposite. Because you have a certain peace of mind, also respect to death. And that can be done in different ways. So again, not just with psychedelics. Definitely, ecological consciousness is developing. And you start to be contagious potentially. So that's why transpersonal psychology, for example, was that, when you're able to change yourself, change your attitude, and then potentially that can be spread to other human beings. Collectively, you can see the change. So I think ecological consciousness is very, very much important in the work of herbalists or all natural therapists, but for everybody, to be honest. For this reason, because even considering that there are some endangered species, and then you want to propagate them. This is the more practical, let's say, aspect of it. But then it can be deeper, so that instead of just tendering the garden, you feel like much connected and exposed at the same time to nature, and that's an amazing feeling to have. It's healing itself, So that's why when I give these courses, I try to transfer these that eventually most people will have. It's a natural event. And an example is, I don't use myself a lot of medicine. I don't actually have herbal teas every day or extracts and so on. Because when you work with these plants and you establish a relationship with them, like I'm speaking about living beings and so on, it's enough. Most of the time you feel healthy just to be exposed to that. And that's because you open up yourself. That's what I think you overwrite the more material aspects. So it's not just, I can actually get the active principle from nettle or from, other plants, and I'm healed because there is an active principle. It's actually beyond that. And that's the main goal of ancestral practices. So to eventually also you are not in need of ingesting or using a plant to be healed. So it's again the spirit and the mind over matter at the end of the day. So you are able to overwrite everything just with the two other powers.
Yeah, I love how you just articulated that, and I really resonate. I think at the beginning of my rekindling of a kind of herbloric connection with the land, I really overdid the herbal teas. And especially I was having lemon balm every day because I knew that it would help with my thyroid. And now I don't need to consume that lemon balm. I can just see that is a deep, dear ally of mine, and I have this real friendship with this plant now. But to kind of contradict that, I also feel very drawn to dietas, and I appreciate it would be a lot on the system to do this, but it sounds quite magical, especially the Shipipo approach, where there's this sense of finding an Icaro through the plant, and or the plant offering an Icaro and so on. And I know that you run dietas yourself, so I'd love to hear you share about this work.
Definitely, as you said, the dieta is also fascinating to me, and I worked a lot with dietas, especially in the past when I first lived with different indigenous groups, especially in Central South America, which is, it's the origin of the shamanic dieta. It has changed me a lot, actually, and the thoughts I had before about ingesting, continuously like a plant in order to connect, I found that with the long periods of isolation in the forest, with the plant, of course, then you arrive to the point where you're so much connected, especially if you had a diet with the same plant for, let's say, weeks, that there is no need to have the plant anymore in your life, especially if it's a strong psychedelic plant or anyway a mind-altering plant. You are connected after. It's kind of like incredible, but it is. So what's the purpose and what is a dieta at the end? in the old traditions of having a dieta, that was not, let's say, for external people. Now, for example, a lot of people, they can have diets in the forest and sessions of ayahuasca, even like many during a week. In the past, the traditions was designed for future shamans or healers, or people that were in charge of medicine in the village or in the area, in the community, let's say. There were training periods, tests, and it's a sort of university that they had to pass. Like now modern doctors, they need to, attend courses, give exams, have their practice and so on to prove they're good doctors. In the past, shamans, even in Siberia, so not just in the Latin American traditions, they had to prove to themselves and to the others that they were able to work with different plants and pass periods of severe disease, so experience themselves these moments, both mentally and physically, to arrive to the bottom. So to a moment when they were losing consciousness, they were extremely sick, and proving that they were able to heal. The isolation itself, it was the big training, because that was also changed me a lot, the perspective of medicine not ingested. So already like being alone without any technology around, just in the forest, and without entertainment, which is hard, for us, it brought me to the concept of going deeper oneself, sometimes enough to find answers. So the fact that then you have a plant, which can be different, psychedelic or not, and you establish a very strong dialogue with this plant in terms of weeks, it's definitely studying. It's learning. That's why they're called master plants, because they teach you, really do. How is this dialogue then? Just definitely is beyond words, so it has not to be written. It has to be perceived and experienced. So it's pure sensorial experience, the dieta. The fact that you may have plants that they disturb your own homeostasis, so even physically, and you pass moments of extreme sickness and you find in yourself, the ability to heal, and mentally also you are absolutely disrupted. You can pass moments of schizophrenia and alteration of mood. These are all part of the training, because you should be able to navigate your own mind and to find answers and to potentially pass what is called the darkest night of the soul. In all the shamanic traditions, we find this everywhere. What is this? No, why should I pass that first? Is it, mandatory? Yes. So if you want to be a medicine man or woman, it's mandatory to pass this extreme moment of disruption, the breaking up of homeostasis in all senses, to find back yourself. So from pieces to complete. So to prove that you are a good doctor, you need to have experienced yourself these disorders. It makes a lot of sense, Veronica. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense that if I had myself, for example, a chronic disorder, and I had the time to investigate, understand deeply what was going on, I can transfer this knowledge. So in order to transfer this knowledge, which is not like only inner knowledge, it's definitely also the connection with plants, it opens up this knowledge to other, realms. Let's say collective knowledge. It can be transferred to others. So that also, after a period of isolation, when you're disconnected from the others, then you come back, but you come back with, answers, with different knowledge and wisdom. And again, it's not that then the shamans, they are instructing people or ordering people to follow a specific treatments. They're educating them, they're encouraging them to do the same. So, and that's what I love more. Now in modern times, these dietas are open to everybody, I think it's important actually. I don't feel there is contamination. It's just important to notice that there are two different things. So for example, I can engage in a dieta which can be shorter. It has not to be a year, in isolation, which is kind of a drastic experience. And still I can increase my ability to have this inner dialogue with everything which is in nature, with the natural environment, with my own mind and so on. So it's a moment of profound reconnection, and it requires, of course, the breaking down of what is known. And that's the most lovable part, because even if it's the panic room, let's say, after that, there is great appreciation for these. And then the dialogue is not lost. So the conversation with nature, universe, everything is open. So it's definitely, the first step that can literally help everybody to understand better, not just the shamanic culture, but also the self. So it's an icebreaker. It can be strong or mild, because depending also on the plants, definitely there are plants that are gentle. And it's the beginning of something that then has to be cultivated.
Yeah, a dieta sounds very intriguing, and I have a few friends who have gone through the experience. I think with what it sounds like, the more intense plants to work with, definitely intrigued. So I know that you've taken your world and your work to Costa Rica. I'd love to hear what you've got going on there and how that land is shaping what you're offering.
Now, for example, we will start in the summer period several courses, trainings as well, that are dedicated to chronic disorders. As we were pointing in this podcast, is one of my favorite subjects, and I think we need to speak a lot about it. And so it's a training that is open to professionals and non-professionals. So it can be also like to investigate your own chronic disease, and to give these tools, strategies, and the ability for people to, again, to find back this inner technology, the inner technology of self-healing, and so to open up to the understanding also of a chronic disorder. And definitely the environment will help, because to be stuck in a beautiful forest and with wildlife, it's definitely a good womb. But the big project, which is not going to happen tomorrow, but is ongoing, is to open a clinic with natural therapies, which is focused definitely on chronic disorders and cancer as well, because I really feel there is a void, and we should feel it. So the future may be more and more of these structures that will be created by people, so to offer the space and time and education that is needed.
Head to alchemiahealingarts.com to learn more about Elisa's courses, research, and healing work. Thank you for being here with the Rooted Healing community. Through deepened imagination, consciousness expansion, and cross-cultural wisdom exchange, we explore psychedelic culture, spirituality, and ecology to ignite collective healing. We offer nature-immersive ceremonial gatherings, legal and safe psychedelic-assisted psilocybin retreats, integrative healing courses, and a growing collection of resources rooted in regenerative reciprocity. Visit rootedhealing.org to learn more. Please do consider joining our Patreon community, where you can gift forward and support our work in exchange for bonus material, book and gift giveaways, meditations, workshops, episode transcripts, community discussion, an array of resources from our guests, and discounts to our events. Your monthly contribution, which can be as little as £2 a month, helps us cover the costs of running the show, and our hope is to gather enough abundant gifters to afford professional audio productions so that we can free up more time to focus on gathering together in person, which is the heartbeat of our work. Think of it as buying me a hot chocolate once a month. I'd be very grateful. Our Patreon has such a rich archive already to support you, and you can gain immediate access when signing up. Patreon is an easy-to-use app both on desktop and on mobile, providing a clear space to explore our archive and upcoming gifts. Come follow us on Instagram at Rooted Healing Co, or find us on the various platforms you tune into. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show if these stories and conversations are touching you. It's a beautiful act of reciprocity to make those couple of clicks and help others discover our work. The music in this episode was by Mike Howe, Odro, and Chris Park. Thank you so much for enriching this episode with your creations. If you'd like to gift your music to the Rooted Healing podcast, please reach out to us via the link in the show notes. I'm your host, Veronica Stanwell. Thanks for listening.